Okay, we're starting the stream shortly. This is just a quick audio test. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions live stream. This is, of course, where I forget to mute my little monitor here. This is, of course, the Excel VBA Chess Challenge. So, you're interested in Excel, particularly in Excel VBA, which is of course the coding language that sits behind Excel, allows us to get so much done, and you want to improve your skills. The chess challenge, even if you don't play chess, is a fun, creative way to really challenge yourself in Excel VBA, allow you to learn a huge amount. And we're now on part 16 of the chess challenge. So already there must be over 10 hours in this series. And I would suggest, if you want an Excel course that is different, certainly won't be boring, and if you're interested in chess, that's a bonus. I'd suggest just going back through the playlists, working along with me. There's a download file for each video, so we're going to have a look at the Excel file in a second. You can download it, work along with me today. You can go back through the series and do that for each video. It's going to maximize learning opportunity for you, build your confidence in Excel VBA. With that said, let's have a look in the chat. Who's with us tonight? Rayhan is with us. Hi Rayhan, how are you? Thank you for your comment on Friday's video release, which was very kind and motivating for me, and gave me some feedback about the live stream setup as well. So try to get started on time tonight. And who else is with us? Paul is with us. Paul says, evening all from sunny Yorkshire. So Yorkshire is one of the counties in the UK. So Paul has a particularly distinctive accent, I would imagine, being from Yorkshire. And maybe in a later stream, I might try out the Yorkshire accent, but don't want to annoy anybody up in the kingdom of Yorkshire up there. So thanks, Paul, for joining. Yeah, and I'm down here in a place called the Vale of Belvoir. The Vale of Belvoir in the UK. Now that's Belvoir spelled Belvoir, which you would have thought you'd say Belvoir, but it's called Belvoir around here. I'm not exactly sure. I think us English people just couldn't quite get the pronunciation the French way. And it's a very scenic place. There's a castle here called Belvoir Castle, and it's a beautiful evening, a little bit of breeze, a few clouds in the sky, but lots of sun in the sky too. So welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Tony is with us as well. Tony, how are you? And welcome. I think, Tony, you had the question about the notation. So maybe that can get us into the file. So as I said, make sure you download the file and work along with me. Yeah, so Tony was saying, to deal with Tony's query first, Tony was saying, we should rename the pieces to match a certain style of chess notation. You can go to the previous live stream and see Tony's comments, and there's different ways to notate chess as far as I know. I think there's 2 ways to do it, and the way we're going to do it is by using the square coordinates, which I do believe is the most used form of chess notation, but I may be wrong. So it's just using these coordinates, and we've got the coordinates here thanks to the routine that I did last time. So when we record a move, it's going to look something like this. So e2 to e4 would be we've got a pawn on e2 here. So a typical first move in chess is moving the pawn 2 squares forward. In our notation, we'd notate that e2 to e4. And as I said, I think this is the most established way of recording games of chess. But of course, I might be wrong and happy to be corrected. And anyway, it's a team effort. We're all part of this little community on the YouTube channel. And for me, if the audience takes ownership of this and pushes it in a particular direction, I'm very happy to serve the needs of the audience. I don't think I could seriously build a chess computer in Excel that I could commercialize. Well, that's a serious discussion. How powerful would the computer be? Well, compared to the chess computers out there, it would have an absolute fraction of the computational power. So I'm not looking to build or sell anything. So the idea of people getting involved, just like Tony did with his comment, the idea of people getting involved, helping shape the direction we're going in, that's very exciting to me. So just, definitely say hello in the chat. And our usual questions in the live stream are, where are you tuning in from? We've got people from Asia in tonight, people from England. Usually have a couple of people from the States tuning in as well. Where are you tuning in from? And what is the weather like? That typical British question. Right. So what are we going to do today? At the end of the last live stream, we produced this give piece location routine. Give piece location routine. What does the routine do? Well, it goes through all of the pieces. We can see the pieces, the shapes on the board sheet here. Goes through the pieces and lists their location. Lists their location in terms of the Excel coordinate, if you like, C9 with the dollar signs, which is, one of the signs that it's an Excel reference, and then gives us the square on the board as well. How did this need come about to build this in? Well, it came about because we were looking at the pawn moves, looking at this situation here, and the pawn captures in a different way to its normal move. So if it's doing a normal move and not capturing a piece, it's going to have a different movement pattern to when it's capturing a piece. So that means we have to know where the other pieces are on the board in order to accurately program these pawn moves. So we made a step in the right direction by putting these piece locations, if you like, in here. But as always, with coding, once you've had a spurt of activity, it's a good time to sit back and assess the state of things a bit and do some tidying up. I always say to people I work with, coding is not a kind of linear process. It's not a smooth progression. You actually have spurts of activity where you're doing coding, just like at the end of the live stream. And then you have periods of time where you're either thinking, conceptualizing. Remember, we're always clear on the concept first before we try to do the coding. So you're conceptualizing, or you're relaxing a bit after a spurt of activity. Now, that's where we are tonight. We had a spurt of activity last time. So we've got to go back and tidy up our workspace. What opportunities do we have to improve efficiency here? What opportunities do we have to improve the efficiency for this code? So this is my first question for the Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions Massive tuning in tonight. What opportunities have we got to improve this code, improve the efficiency of this code? We want to have a lean setup. We want to have maximum efficiency because we know, well, it's a sensible thing with any application. We know this application is going to get more and more complex. So we want to take every opportunity we can to improve efficiency and make sure we've got maximum leanness, if you like. So looking at this section of code here, what might we do to improve the efficiency? And it's something I've covered in the current series that we're doing on the channel, the real world VBA task. I've demonstrated this technique in that series. Any ideas from the chat? Well, one thing we can do is use with, end with to avoid repeated code. Now, how is that going to work? Well, just looking at this code, I can tell it's not that efficient because there's lots of repeated syntax. As far as possible, we want to avoid repeated syntax. And VBA provides this nice construct, which is called with, end with. Now I can just say with, and then the name of an object there. In this case, we're going to work with a sheet, and it's usually a sheet that you'll do this with, although not always. And I put the object name there, and then no full stop, just deliberate mistake there, maybe. Deliberate mistake there just to show you that you don't need the full stop. And then we say end with at the end. And I'm going to put a comment here saying ends with engine sheet. Okay, there we go. So that's our setup. We've got with and end with. So when you open a new construct, whether it's a loop or a conditional statement, or in this case, a with end with statement, when we open the construct, we close the construct at the same time, and that's going to save us stress later. Also make sure that the indentation is accurate. All of these things go towards an efficient application that's working with maximum leanness, an application that you want to come back to. There's nothing worse, and I've been there so many times in my work. There's nothing worse than having an application that's a bit of a mess. You got lots of modules, codes all over the place. It means you don't want to come back to it. You don't want to come back to your workspace because it's all untidy. So let's keep it as tidy as possible. That's going to mean we're enthusiastic for coming back here. So we've said with Sheets Engine, so we can now go through this code and remove that piece of syntax with Sheets Engine, or rather just Sheets Engine. So I'm just going through, getting rid of, the engine syntax here. We can get rid of you as well. And then let's get rid of one more here. There we go. Okay, Excel seems pretty happy with that. Control S, save the file. We'll test it in a second, but I had a project that I came back to. I'm just trying to remember which project it was. Yes, so I worked for a customer in sports betting and looked at a file a couple of weeks ago that I built 2 years ago, I think. And it was lacking this with, end with. And there was lots of opportunities for putting with, end with. This file had lots and lots of repeated code. So I went through, took me a couple of hours, went through, put in all of the widths, end widths that I could put in, and it improved the runtime of the code by, I think, 20 or 30%. So you can get not just marginal improvements, you can get significant improvements in terms of runtime using with and end with. Let me know in the chat. Are you using with, end with? Let me know. Have you had any success with it? Is it speeding up your code? So Control S, save the file. And is this going to work? That's the question. Looks reasonable enough. Just sense checking the code. Okay, let's play the code. F5 key. And let's do that one more time. It's going to hit the F5 key here, playing the code. Okay, so we couldn't actually see anything happen there. So let's just clear out these cells. And then we're going to hit the F5 key and those cells are populated again. And does it look reasonable? We do have a pawn that's on a bit of a funny square here. So this is the white H pawn, should be on H4 on the chessboard. Looking at the white H pawn here, yes, and it is on H4 on the chessboard, which is J7 on the spreadsheets. H4 is J7 on the spreadsheet. Looking at this cell here, of course, so that's J7. Good, so it seems to be working now. In that case, it was just a kind of fairly simple example. So we can't feel the efficiency improvement, but if you have a longer routine or if you have a routine that's calling other routines, then you will feel the efficiency improvement here. But it's not just the efficiency improvement in terms of the runtime, it's also the efficiency improvement in terms of cognitive load. That code is easier to read because we've got rid of some of those repeated structures. So, it's not just being kind to your customer who's going to have a faster macro, it's being kind to yourself too, and making sure that you keep wanting to come back to the code. Good. So we've made a small efficiency improvement there. So where is this routine, this give piece location? At the moment, I think it's just sitting on its own. Yep, I can't see it at the top of our main routine. Remember, this is the main routine, which is called possible moves, and this is telling us the possible moves. So what we want to do is run this routine at the beginning of this routine, if that makes sense. Run the routine to locate the pieces at the beginning of the routine that tells us the piece moves, because we need the piece location information to process the possible moves. That's the whole rationale for putting this in. Let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. How's the weather where you are tonight? So where are we going to drop this code in? If moves showing, okay. Right. If moves are showing, if recon, okay. I think we'd actually want it in, yeah. Let's put it in here. Or is that too early? I'm going to put it in after the variable declaration section here. Routines give code. Yeah, okay. I've actually left an annotation from last time, which I've forgotten about. Routine to give current square of pieces. So I created a bit of space here to put this routine in. Call give piece location. And let's retain that annotation there. Control S, save the file. So make sure you're working along at home. Have you downloaded the file? Let me know in the chat. Have you downloaded the file? Are you working along with us today? So what's going to happen today? So now when we hit the pieces here, we should have this code running in the engine and populating these two columns here. So just to test that, I'm going to clear these columns. And then, so what happens? Oh, these columns now populated. These columns are now populated. So that seems to be working reasonably well. And, the problem I'm thinking about here, we've clearly got lots of problems to deal with. Just going to grab some water. Clearly got lots of problems to deal with. So it's a case of kind of prioritizing them and thinking about ordering. And I'm currently thinking, how is this going to work if a shape is off the board? Yeah. If a shape is captured or taken, then we want to indicate that here. We want to, rather than saying the cell reference, we want to say captured or taken or off, maybe. So would it be a good idea to put that in now? And then how would we put it in? So what are we going to do? When a piece is captured, we've got to think, how are we going to kind of simulate that? How are we going to program that? We could delete the piece. We could, of course, make the piece kind of disappear, literally delete it. But a better way to do it would be to control the piece visibility. Now, is this easily done? Let's have a go. Let's just have a go at this quickly. So I just want to make this, I just want to hide this shape. So B pawn 7, shall we see if we can hide it? And can I write that code, or will I have to record that code or something? And how do we hide a piece? Yeah, that's a question for the chat here. So I've got a shape and I want to make the shape invisible. I want to hide the shape. How can we do that without going to the VBA editor? And let's just put some code in here. And let's call it hide piece test. And I'm going to say for deletion here to make sure I delete this code later. Okay, hide piece test. So what's the name of this piece? This piece here is B pawn 7. Just looking in the top left hand corner, I can see the name of the piece is B pawn 7. So if we say active sheets dot shapes, and let's say B pawn 7, and then what's the property? I think it's dot visible, but I'm not sure. Equals false. Okay, so what happens when we run this code? So had somebody new in the chat. So VJ is here. VJ, welcome. Thank you very much for tuning in. And he says, I'm still in the first standard watching your beginner videos, but sure one day I'll catch you live streaming. VJ, don't worry if you're just a beginner. I'm absolutely sure you're going to get some value out of this live stream. It's not just the more advanced coding. We're talking about coding principles, how to approach coding generally, and how to build confidence in VBA. So I'm sure you get something out of the stream. Thanks for tuning in, VJ. So what happens when we run this code? Let's just move the pawn across. Yes. Tony, I love that idea. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I was talking at the beginning about how we've got to do this, as a community. And Tony's come up with an absolutely brilliant idea, which is, can we have a rack at the bottom along here? Let's just move to the other side of the screen. Can we have a kind of rack along here where we could put the captured pieces? Oh, that's a great idea, Tony. We will do that. We'll do that. We won't do that today because we're still programming the moves. So we're not going to deal with captured pieces today, but later, yeah, I think if we had a rack along here for the captured pieces, that's a great shout, Tony. Thank you very much. Make sure you remind me of that later in the series as well. We'll make sure we put that in. So what are we expecting to happen? Well, when we execute this code, this shape here, which is B pawn 7, we're just expecting this to disappear. Paul says he was pondering the same thing. Good ideas there. Okay, and the shape has gone. Just hit the F5 key there to run the code. Can we bring the shape back? F5 key, and the shape is back there. Okay. So that's, a question I often get on the YouTube channel is, do I need to learn the code, before I do coding? Or can you send me kind of a list of syntax to learn? And what I say is, listen, I don't know the syntax, okay, which is true. There's a few basic things I know, but the syntax there for making a shape, controlling the visibility of a shape, I wasn't sure about that. And I found it out by, trying it and then testing it. Okay, so rather than kind of obsessing about learning things, memorizing things, obsess about the skill. Obsess about the skill. And the skill is actually finding a way to make things work because you're never going to memorize everything. Okay, so you saw what I did there. Just got some code, tested it out. You could have got that code off Google, for example, with an internet search. You could have got a similar thing. So we've got an interesting piece of information here. So what we want to say in this routine, now this is the routine that's giving us the piece location. We want to say if the, if the name of the sheet appears in the piece list. Yeah, okay. So we want to say, if the shape is invisible, then we want to put something else in. Okay. Okay, so how to do this? Okay, right. First, I'm going to say now this should allow us to go through the code and then understand if the VBA editor is understanding if the VBA editor, who's understanding who here? Is this visible property going to be useful for us? I'm just going to go through the code with the F8 key here, stepping through the code. Nothing happened there. Okay, so what's going to happen now? Okay, so we can see the visible property here is -1. So -1 must be the shape is visible. Okay, and then, and again, -1 we've got here. Okay, so we can use this, I think we can use this syntax. I wasn't expecting that -1 to come up. I was expecting a true or false to come up there. Okay, Mike is in. Mike, how are you? Welcome. Mike, where are you tuning in from? I think Mike is in the States. Are you in the States, Mike? Welcome. And Chris Sheep.visible equals true. And let's have a message box saying shape visible here. Okay, let's try this then. Mike, sorry, Mike's in Gloucestershire, of course. Is that Gloucestershire somewhere in deepest, darkest Alabama or something? No, it's Gloucestershire, just in the southwest of England. Welcome, Mike. Okay, stepping through the code again. Stepping through the code. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, VBA does seem to understand when we use this syntax here. So this is going to work fine. Okay. So yeah, if Chris shape visible equals true, then we want those things to happen. And if not, we want something else to happen. And as always, let's close the conditional statement when we open the conditional statement. And then we also want some indentation here. Okay, and this part of the conditional statement is if the shape is visible. And this part of the conditional statement is if the shape is not visible, i.e. the shape has been taken. Yeah, Tony says, I think any non-zero value equates to true. Okay, that's why we were seeing that -1. I wonder what that's all about. I would have thought that 1 is true and 0 is false, just like when you configure a VLOOKUP formula. The last component, the fourth component, you can have 1 or 0 for true or false, or you can type in true or false. I would have thought it would be the same in VBA, but obviously not. Good. Okay, if the shape is not visible, right. So I'm just going to play the routine now. I'm expecting the same outcome here. Expecting the same outcome. So we put some code in. So let's test it. Do we get the same outcome? F5 key. Yeah, and we do seem to get the same outcome. Have we got the location of this pawn, which is on C6? So that's black pawn 7, I think. Black pawn 7, just outside your screenshot. Black pawn 7 is on A6. A6 there. There we go. Yep. So that seems to be working. Is it on A6? It's on. Okay. Yeah. It's just the top of the shape's on A6 there. So let's run it again. See if it pulls it down to A5. Okay, and it now is on A5. Interesting. So even if our pieces just overlap another square, Excel is going to take that top square, even if most of the piece is on the square below, which is what we just saw there. Good. And Tony says Access uses -1. I've got a question for you about Access. Do you think somebody like me should learn Access better? I know Access a little bit, but people sometimes say to me, all this stuff you're doing to Excel, particularly the database type stuff, you should really be doing in Access. What do you think, Tony? Personally, obviously I just love Excel. I just think the interface, the range of functionality, I'm very comfortable there, and I haven't found anything I haven't been able to do in Excel, but clearly Access gives us better command of databases. What do you think about that, Tony? Right, so if the piece isn't visible, let's just say chrisshape.name. Okay, so this means if we make a shape non-visible, and here's another question for the chat, how do you make a shape hidden without using VBA? Without using VBA. Paul says, I have Access database for my CD collection. Paul, you must have an extensive CD collection. And Paul, are you giving away your age there? I'm not sure. I still have a few CDs. Got a couple on the just on the shelf behind me, actually. But yes, CDs these days. It reminds me of, have you seen that video on the internet, on Facebook or something, of youngsters, so I think people who are about 15 to 20, trying to use a traditional telephone. So a telephone where you have the handset comes up and then you dial the numbers. There's a brilliant video of youngsters trying to get their heads around that, and their minds are just blown. It's good stuff. So it reminded me of when you mentioned CDs, that reminded me of that for some reason. Well worth looking up. Tony says Excel is more understandable. I think that's true, and yeah, the people who have recommended Access to me, they're not usually how would I say, non-IT people. It's usually computer programmers who recommend Access. So yeah, I probably value the kind of friendly interface that Excel gives us. Paul has got 5,000 CDs. Fantastic. So what I would do, Paul, if you get your Access database, put it in Excel and use a random number generator to give you a random CD of choice. That's what I would probably do. Anyway, so where were we before we started talking about CDs? Right. Yeah, the question was, how do I make a shape non-visible in Excel? Now, this is one question that I do know the answer to. So I can go whole desktop. Now, if you are using shapes in any way, you need to know about this. So we go to page layout, and then we go to selection pane over on the right. Page layout and selection pane. Took a little while to load up there. And then we've got all of our shapes listed here. And we have this eye. And we can change the visibility here. So we're talking about B pawn 7, the seventh black pawn. So I can just hit the eye here and I can see the pawn disappears. Now that's useful for us because we're trying to test if we can distinguish between pieces that are visible and not visible. So when I run this code now, we're expecting the name of the hidden shape, B pawn 7, to flash up here. Control S, save the file, F5 key, and there is our shape there. Just to convince ourselves, let's make the black rook invisible as well using the selection pane. Selection pane, you can see, is so easy to use. This was a game changer for me when I first discovered it. And then back to the VBA editor, F5 key, expecting 2 now, B pawn 7 and B rook 2. Lovely. So if the shape is not visible, then we're just going to say here, take this line of code. So there's some repetition here. Maybe there might be a more efficient way to do this using a variable maybe, but we're going to have to repeat some syntax whatever we do. Okay, and let's just type in other side of the screen, and let's just type in off here. Off. So off as in off the off. Here we go. Yep. Off as in off the board. Copy that down, and then once again, there we go. Good stuff. So what's that going to do? Well, on our engine sheet, so in our columns where we're putting the piece location, inputting that information into these columns. So rather than having the location of the piece there, we should just have off there. But do we have any invisible pieces at the moment? Some pieces are not visible. Let's check that with the selection pane. Whole desktop there, page layout and selection pane. And there we go. Yeah, we've got 2 invisible pieces. I'm just going to take it down to 1. So the black 7th pawn is not visible. So F5, run the code here in the engine sheet. Yeah, we can see we've got off here. So let's test it with another piece. So let's say the white king. Get rid of the white king. Control S, save the file. F5, run the code. Back into the engine sheet, and we can see, yeah, the white king has disappeared there. Then let's restore all the shapes, make them all visible in the selection pane. Super convenient, as you can see. Back to the VBA editor. Control S, F5 key, and we're back to what we have originally. The location of the white king is E1. That's accurate. The only non-standard. So we've got, yeah, the white pawn is on H4. The last white pawn is on H4. There we go. Good. So done a bit of extra work there. Wasn't even planning to do that in this stream. Bit of extra work there, but we've managed to get this situation where, yeah, we just get a nice message here in the database to tell us if a piece is off the board. That's going to be useful because we're going to use this information to tell us the location of pieces, and wheeling back round to what we were supposed to be doing in this stream, this kind of situation here where we have pawns aligned in this formation, this kind of situation here, we want Excel to understand that the diagonal capture move that a pawn does, the diagonal capture move is possible. So question for the chat. I'm going to have a little drink of water here. Question for the chat. How are we going to do that? How are we going to program in this possible capture move? I'm just going to grab some water. Also, do let me know in the chat if you have any other questions. I've had 2 meetings this afternoon about the future of the channel, and I'll just tell you a little bit about it. So in my job, I do the main thing I do is spreadsheet development. So I work for individuals, companies, schools, public sector organizations to help them get more out of Excel. And that's usually doing this kind of spreadsheet development, or sometimes Excel training. Excuse me. And this is what I'm doing, but I also occasionally do university teaching as well. And I teach on an overseas MBA program. So an MBA is a business qualification, and it's quite well established here in the UK now and overseas. You know, you get lots of kind of mid-career people doing MBAs. But what I'm interested in is business education generally is not very accessible. As far as I see it, not very accessible. You know, and I'd like to ask people in the chat, you know, what do you do when you want your business education? Where do you get your business education from? Now, it's great if you can do an MBA, although not all MBA content is super valuable, but that's a different discussion. It's great if you have the resources, the time and the money, because they're expensive, the time and the money to do an MBA, or maybe your company will sponsor you to do an MBA. Then if you're in that kind of fortuitous situation, then that's good. But if you can't do an MBA for whatever reason, then where do you get your business education? You might work for a big company and there might be some in-house training, which is variable quality. Some people say very good, some people say not so good. Then what else have you got? Well, you've got things like YouTube, people like me on YouTube, but the options are not very good if you want a cost-effective and effective business education program. You know, where do you go? Now, I see a big gap in the market there, but not just in business terms, a gap in the market. You know, it's kind of a social problem for me that, you know, we're in a world where people can't access the information they need in order to understand business. You know, for example, to understand spreadsheets better. So I'm going to set up, or I'm in the process of setting up, a business education program. And it is going to be paid, but it's going to be accessible via a fairly small monthly fee. And for your monthly fee, you're going to get 1 or 2 sessions per week, you know, led by people like me and other MBA type lecturers, people from business as well. 2 live sessions per week, which is going to consist of some kind of lecture, some kind of activity. You'll have the chance to interact online with whoever's doing the session. So it certainly won't just be, you know, somebody talking for 2 hours. There's going to be interactiveness there, just like we got on this live stream. And we're going to be covering business education topics. So things obviously like Excel, data analysis, but also business strategy, organizations, you know, everything you'll typically learn on an MBA. We can cover these topics. So we're going to provide a service that's small monthly fee, lots and lots of value. And over time, we're going to have this archive of videos building up, of really useful videos about education topics, and they'll be accessible for your monthly fee as well. So this is where I'm trying to take the channel, although this will be separate to the YouTube channel. This is what I have in mind. So anyway, let me know in the chat, what do you think to that idea? Is that a stupid idea? Have I missed something? Or is that something potentially you might be interested in? So definitely let me know what's going on in the chat. Tony says, if piece A lands on the same square as piece B, then B is set to be indivisible. Okay, Tony, not exactly sure what you mean there, but let me know, and we should move on. Okay, so We want to program these diagonal pawn moves. So how are we going to do that? Well, we go back to our kind of coding principles, and if we can, Paul says, yes, the CDs do show my age. Also remember the old dial phones. Seriously, that clip of the young people trying to use the old dial phones is one of the funniest things I've ever seen online. So please, please, please look it up. It is brilliant. So around here, looking in the VBA editor, we've got our code to deal with the pawn moves. How do we know it's a pawn move? We've got our comments. We've got our annotations here. We've got well-maintained code. That's how annotations and comments can help. You should be keeping yours up to date. So can we take some of this code and let's see if we can program just to have the diagonal squares in. Okay, I'm going to set up the board again here. Yes. Just to have the diagonal squares in. So now if I click on a pawn, let's say the pawn's here. And now I click on the pawn and then I just have the square in front. Let's program it first so I have the diagonal squares in. Let's not worry about whether there's a piece in the square or not. You know, that's more difficult. Let's simplify what we're trying to do. Take an intermediary step, do that first, and then try to move on. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use some existing code. 1 square if this is black, 1 square if this is white. What's the best code to use here? I think we're going to let's take this piece of code and let's try to do it for the white pawns first. And this is a diagonal pawn move, diagonal capture if whites. Okay, so this diagonal capture, well, it's 1 square in front of the pawn. And remember, this row count variable, as the value of the variable increases, we're going down the board. So if we say row count equals -1, that's actually going to get us to a square just above the piece. So we're happy for that. And then col count, well, col count has got to be -1, 2. -1 as well. Yeah, now I'm expecting the square to the top left. So I'm expecting this square here to be highlighted when I click the pawn. So we've got a difficult coding task. So as usual, just dividing it up, breaking it down. Let's do a little step and then let's build from there. So what happens when I hit the pawn now? And I can see I've managed to get the diagonal square to the left. So I'm happy with that. And then, okay, good. Okay, and yeah, let's see if we can get the diagonal square to the right as well. So I'm going to say diagonal capture to, let's say top left if white. And then we say diagonal capture top right if white. Now there will certainly be scope for simplifying this. And maybe we'll come back to it at the end of the stream or in the next stream for simplifying this code. So I'm certainly not doing this in the simplest way, top right if white, but I am doing it in a way that I can understand, and then when we get it all working, we can look at opportunities for making it simpler and more efficient. So top right, so col count is then gonna be 1. Okay, so what are we expecting to happen now? Well, when I hit the pawn, we're expecting these 3 squares in front of the pawn, so the square directly in front, we expected that. The square to the left, we expected that, and the square to the right. The square to the left and the right, they're newly programmed in. So I'm going to hit the pawn now, and we've got the 3 squares there. So let me know in the chat, are you following along with this task? Do you have Excel open? I hope you're following along with me. But clearly these pawn moves, they're not all possible because this top left move and this top right move, these 2 moves, entail a piece being on those squares. A piece has to be on those squares for those moves to be valid. So here comes the question. How are we going to do that? How are we going to say to Excel, these moves are only valid if there's a piece on this square? And yeah, you've got some clues. The routine that we've just put in, remember the routine we've just put in that populates these columns that give us the piece location. Here's a hint. That information is definitely going to help us. So let me know in the chat. What do you think? Remember, first it's about conceptual thinking. Can you literally talk it out loud, describe in your own native language how you want the code to work? So what ideas do you have conceptually? Okay. Well, what if we could do this? What if we could say to Excel, okay, you see this square to the top right, or let's do the top left because that's the first one. You see this square to the top left. Take the coordinate of that square, and we could use the chessboard coordinate or we could use the Excel coordinate. Take the coordinate of that square, and if that coordinate appears in this column, then there must be a piece on that square. How about that for some logic? Let me know what you think. Does that logic make sense? And is it logic that we can program in Excel? Do we have the resources we need to actually program that? I think we do. Okay. Okay. Just looking at the resources available to us. Is this easily done? Okay, so let's try this. Okay, right. So where were we working? We were working around here. Okay, so row counts and then col counts. So the information I'm trying to get here is the address of the cell to the top left of the pawn. No idea if this is going to work. I haven't done any prep for this, but this gives you an insight into the process. You know, this is how I would feel my way through this task. Current square. I'm not sure about this. How do we define current square? Oh no, I think maybe it does work. Anyway, Control S, save this, and then I'm just gonna. Okay. Okay, actually. Okay, I'm going to just put this inside a conditional statement so that I can get this information when we are on the pawn and that diagonal top left capture square. So let's see what happens here. Okay. Okay, Control S, save the file. Okay, F7 we've got, yeah. So F7, of course, is the Excel reference, not the board reference. Okay, but that should do the job, F7, because, you know, we gave ourselves flexibility, gave ourselves some flexibility to do it either way when we did the previous routine. So just seeing the viewers here, according to my stream, we now have double figures. The viewers have moved into double figures, so must be some people in the chat who haven't said hello. So make sure you say hello in the chat, guys. Usual question, which is where are you tuning in from? I'm between Nottingham and Leicester in the Midlands in the UK. where are you tuning in from, and what's the weather like where you are. So we've got this little message box flashing up. So again, what are we going to do with this information? It's fairly clear in my mind now, conceptually, how this might work. But what do you think? Can anybody in the chat tell me, or maybe I can tell you the concept. So I think we should take this cell reference that we've got here. We should take this cell reference and then see, does that cell reference appear in the list of cell references that describes the location of the current pieces? That's how I think it should work conceptually. How do we translate that into the technical stuff? How do we translate into some code that Excel can understand? What we got in the chat, Kevin, good to see you. Hello, Chris, tuning in a bit late from New York. Fantastic. Just been speaking to two people actually from New York this afternoon, Kevin. And Kevin, never been to New York, never been, would love to go. So let me know, what's the mood like in New York today? You got some good weather. I just imagine it being a very busy place. I live in a village, in pretty much a rural area, a farming community. And compared to the hustle and bustle of New York, well, it must be a world away, but that's the wonders of modern technology, I suppose. So Kevin, yeah, give me a flavor. Give me a flavor of what it's like in New York today. So any ideas in the chat about how we're going to do this technically? Well, what formula is going to help us? What formula is going to help us see if a value appears in a range of values? What options have we got there? Mike says set a range from the first cell where the list of positions of the black pieces start and then search that. Oh, very good points. Very good point. Mike raises an excellent point, which is we have to distinguish between the black pieces and the white pieces. Oh, excuse me. Yes, we have to distinguish between the black pieces and the white pieces, because if we had this kind of configuration, then yes, the white pawn cannot take a white pawn. So we have to check, yes, we have to check that we're only looking in the right area here. Excuse me. We have to check we're only looking in the right area of the database. Yeah. So for the black pieces, we want to look at the white area. For the white pieces, we want to look at the black area. Very good point there, Mike. I'm loving the fact that I'm actually doing this faster because I'm doing it live, because I'm getting these ideas coming in. That's something I never would have thought of myself. Yep, Mike says it cuts the process of checking if the piece is black. Yep, I like it. Okay, well. Okay, I'm happy with this. And yeah, okay. Yep. And okay, application.worksheet function we're going to use here. Now, is COUNTIF range and value, or is it value and range? I always get these the wrong way around. COUNTIF, there we go, range and criteria. So with our COUNTIF application.worksheet function, so when we're using application.worksheet function, we're calling a worksheet formula in the VBA editor. Okay, close that there. Yeah, so we need its range then criteria. So the range is going to be, excuse me, so now we want to look at the black pieces here. So just outside of your screenshot, it's going to be G19 to G35 here. G19 to G35. Okay. Get rid of the usual spelling mistakes. Okay. 0. There we go. Okay. Okay, now I did break some of my rules there because that was a long piece of coding. And Mike says G20. Yep, thank you, Mike. Should be G20, not G19. Fantastic stuff. Yep, this is a long piece of code. I think I could have broken it down better by testing this application.worksheet function here. Testing that separately first. That would have kept the stress levels down. Because it was quite stressful putting that together. And if it doesn't work, it's going to be quite stressful to take it apart and try to test it. But what we're expecting to happen now is, yeah. You know what? I'm just going to delete this diagonal capture top right. Right, let's give it a go. So what are we expecting to happen here? Okay, that looks right. So the moment of truth. If we put a black pawn here, are you ready for this one? If we put a black pawn there, then it should highlight a possible move. It should highlight a possible move. Mike says, wouldn't it be easier to use range G20, G35 dot find? I don't know much about dot find, Mike. Is that a VBA function? If that's a VBA function, that's something we could look at. And yes, even naming the range. Naming the range is also a possibility. Naming a range would mean that if we subsequently change the structure of this table, then it would still work. Maybe we'll look at that in a second. Okay, Mike, I'm writing down the dot find function here. Dot find VBA function. I'll have a look at that, Mike. Maybe we can integrate that. Right, let's hit the pawn. Okay, excellent. We have that possible move in there. So if the black pawn is here, that's the only move. Excuse me. If we move the white pawn up, then we have the possible moves there. So that seems to have worked. Seems to have worked well. So let's just set something up on a different part of the board. Let's do some more extensive testing. Just hit setup board. Take the pieces back. Okay, and then let's put just black pawn down here. Oh, this is interesting. Will this work? There we go. Yeah, very good. Yeah, so we've got 3 possible moves here. Because it's the first move, the pawn can go 1 square, 2 squares, or the pawn can do the diagonal capture. Let's just send this pawn back to base, back to its starting square. Okay, and then, yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. Seems to be working. So I wonder if before the end of this stream we can get all of the pawn moves working. G20, G35, just checking that reference again. G20 to G35, yep, accurate. Okay, so this is diagonal capture top left if white. let's go diagonal capture top right if white. Now we can certainly do this more efficiently. If I just change this value here, go over to the other side of the screen. If I just change this value here, this should allow us to process this top left capture just for the white pieces. I just changed the value of col count there from -1 to 1. That will effectively put it on the other side of the pawn. Right, so what happens now? Let's put 2 pawns in the middle of the board here. Okay. Yep, that's coming in as a possible capture. And here. And yep, 2 possible captures there. Set up the board again. And then let's put the pawn just on the 6th rank here. It's going to come up with 3 possible moves. Yeah, it seems to be working now. The kind of blocking moves we're going to have to start dealing with soon. I think that might be the next thing we deal with. So clearly what we've got, you know, kind of looks nice, but is clearly wrong, you know, because these bishop moves, for example, they're blocked. There's blocking pieces there. So we're not accounting for the blocking pieces yet. I think I said last week, I still haven't got conceptually an idea for how to program that in. So I'm going to put that one out to the community. Still got double figures in the chat. So how are we going to deal with this idea of a blocking piece? You know the resources we've got. We've got this code. We've got this database. What resources have we got to help us deal with this idea of a blocking piece? Any ideas there? Good. So it seems to be working for the white pieces, the pawn moves. Yep, Tony says, can we use OR to combine both left and right? That's definitely possible. I'm feeling a bit tired and I'm not very good with the ands and the ors, Tony. You probably know from the previous streams. I'm just having a look now. Is this going to be massively stressful? So if we put all of that in a bracket, okay. Right, I'm going to try this then and see if it works. If not, then I will just return to previous operation here. In fact, we can just copy paste this, can't we? Maybe it's easier than I thought. Famous last words. Whoops. No, that was right. Copy that in. Next line, yes, that's correct. That should be an error. Got our brackets there, and then we need to change this to an OR. Okay. And that's and that has to be an AND. If, or, and that. So if all of that's happening and or all of that, okay. Okay, let's switch this one off. Okay, so Paul, and Tony, I'm giving this a go. Paul has just said, don't forget en passant. En passant, of course, is the move in chess where if you have a situation like this, where you have a pawn that's on the 4th rank, if we're talking about the white pieces, and then we have a pawn here, and I should say that black pawn is there first, and then this pawn moves 2 squares. Well, in chess, the way it works is the pawn has moved over this central square, and this pawn can therefore take en passant, in passing. So that's something, we're going to have to get to that later, Paul, I think. I think we are going to have to make some assumptions, and en passant for the time being, I think we're going to have to leave that one out, but we'll maybe get to it later. And Kevin is talking about dot find as well. The only caveat to find is it's significantly slower than match if you're working with large data sets. That's a very interesting one, Kevin. And thanks for sharing that. I'm really interested in more efficient ways of doing things. You know, in this stream, we've covered with and end with, and like, it sounds like Kevin and others are working with large data sets. I'm working with data sets, several thousand rows. So I'm really interested in what the slower and faster functions are, and I think there's a gap on YouTube for doing kind of spreadsheet speed tests, VBA speed tests. So have the same job done two different ways and demonstrate the time difference between the two. I'd like to do some videos like that. So Kevin or Paul says, I don't blame you for leaving en passant. Thank you, Paul. So Kevin or Mike or anybody, if you want to collaborate on some videos about advanced videos about doing things the most efficient way in Excel. So for example, the example you're talking about there, Kevin, find versus match. I'm also interested in offset versus index, and any situation where you could do one things two different ways using the main functions, not using super obscure stuff. You know, I think that would be really useful for people like me who are trying to do things more efficiently. Good. So does our or statement work? Let's create some kind of formation here. Just got to make sure the pawn is correctly positioned here. Okay, let's bring this pawn forward. So what are the possible moves now? Well, it's one square forward or take the pawn. Seems to have worked. So if we have another pawn here, now there's three possible moves. Okay. Didn't quite get that one. That's a shame. I thought we were in business there. I know why. Everybody should be screaming at the screen now. So I just need to change this value to 1. Just change the value of the col count variable. What happens now? Beautiful. Now it does seem to be working. Let's try the same thing up here. Push the pawn over here. Okay, excellent. Okay, what if there isn't a pawn on that square? Ooh, what's happened there then? Interesting. That doesn't seem accurate to me. Yeah, Kevin says that those videos would be useful. They would be very useful, I'm sure. Sure they would be useful. Bit flummoxed here by the... Okay, so what I'm actually going to just shut the file down and then go to the previous version of the file with the previous code in, and then see if we've still got the same problem there. Okay, so what's the code like in this file? Let's have a look. Okay, yep. So we've got the code in this file, yep. So I'm going to set up the same situation. Do we have the same problem? Do we have the same problem here? No, we don't have the same problem. Okay, so that says to me I didn't quite... It's because not run where the pieces are located. Yeah, I don't think I quite got the syntax right then. When I tried to bring those two statements together. So yeah, ooh, okay. So I'm gonna just to finish this discussion, I'm gonna keep with my long structure here, and then maybe in the comments somebody can tell me the syntax to combine these two into one. To combine those two into one. Mike says, I think it would be easy just to load the 8 surrounding squares into a multi-dimensional array, write a function that returns the empty cells, and if it's empty, allow passage. Yes, okay, but how do you allow passage? Because it's easy if you're looping through the squares and working away from the piece. Then it's easy, but that's not how we're looping through the squares, and this is the problem. We're looping through the squares from top left to bottom right, you see. We're not starting at the piece and then moving out. So that's the particular quality or deficiency of our code that makes this more difficult, I think. Mike says load all the moves into an array. You've lost me there, Mike. I have fairly rudimentary VBA skills, and I'm trying to keep it fairly basic in terms of the skills we use, the techniques we use, so that it's accessible to as many people as possible as well. So I'm wondering if we can quickly, okay, no, we're not going to have time to do that today, but we've got to the point where, yeah, we've got these moves working for the white pawn. Okay, so for example, if the black pawn comes out here, then yes, that's correct. That's not correct, but that's because it's a blocking situation, so we're going to deal with that. And then that's also correct. So we're happy with that for the white pieces. So next time we'll look at how to get this working for the black pawns. And also guys, people in the chat, if I can simplify this, if I can bring these two pieces of syntax together into a single piece of syntax using OR, then somebody can leave it in the comments or shoot me an email. I'll put that in next time too. Good. Mike says, yeah, let me know, guys. Any final questions? Going to wrap this up fairly soon because I do need to eat my dinner. I'm getting rather hungry. And somebody said to me, in fact, Rayhan said to me, keep the streams around an hour or people are going to be discouraged because it's going to be too long. So this is already an hour and about an hour and 10 minutes, I think. So any final questions in the chat, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know if there's any final questions in the chat. Mike says, I really like the approach you are taking. I wrote my first macro following your tutorials about a year ago. Mike, that is brilliant. That is brilliant to hear. Congratulations on writing your first macro. And yeah, with this series, it's all about the approach. I think that's really the most important thing with coding. Certainly with VBA, what is your kind of attitude? What's your approach? Have you got the patience? Have you got the resilience? Can you try different approaches? Have you got the right testing approach? Do you tidy up the VBA editor as we've been doing? Hopefully all of these meta themes, what I will call a meta theme, are coming through. And if you can do those things, it doesn't matter how much code you know now. If you can master all those skills and really do them intentionally in your coding, then you're going to get very good at VBA very quickly as long as you put the work in. So that is exactly what this stream is about. That's what this series is about. So just quickly, guys, we have 3 videos a week on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to do Monday, Tuesday, Friday. Monday is a video release, Tuesday live stream, Friday is another video release. On Fridays, we're doing the VBA example task series. I'm going to shoot some more videos in that series this week. We'll release one of those on Friday. And then on Mondays, it's the Your Daily Tiger compilation. So I do a daily video, a daily 60-second video, which I release on Instagram and on Facebook. And I also link to it on Twitter. So follow Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions on Instagram or Facebook, daily 60-second video there. And I'm very happy to take your questions. Just as with this series, very happy to answer your questions as best I can. I'd love to do a 60-second video for you. Whatever's on your mind about Excel, how to get better at Excel. Are you a beginner at Excel? Or business strategy, business analysis more generally. Very happy to help you out with a 60-second video. Mike says, yeah, will you keep streaming around the same time as today? It will be around this time. 6 o'clock is usually a good time for me. But I think the most popular time was about 3 o'clock actually. But to be honest, it's not a massive difference, you know. So probably for next week, I'll probably keep this time, but it does depend a bit on what I'm doing on my schedule and stuff. Good. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Thank you to the people who've commented: Tony, VJ, Paul, Mike, and Kevin tuning in from New York, and everybody else who's commented. Anybody else I've missed out, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the same time next week for more from the Skunkworks. Take care.